All right, let's jump right into this. We're going to break down India's new crime rule book, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or BNS, and it redefines some of the most common crimes we think we know. And trust me, the details are fascinating.
So here's a question for you. Is it the same thing? You might think so, right? But under India's new laws, the answer is actually not quite. And that little difference, that specificity, is exactly what we're going to get into.
What this new code, the BNS, really does is create these much clearer distinctions, based on things like intent, force, and even trust. So let's unpack how it all works, and we'll start with the foundation of it all.
Okay, first section, we're going to start with the basics, the crime that we all feel like we understand, theft.
So this is the classic definition, right? But here's the absolute key, the timing. For something to be legally considered theft, that dishonest intention has to exist right at the moment of taking. Not before, not after, but right then.
So, think of it like a recipe. You need these 4 key ingredients. You got to have the dishonest intention, it has to be movable property, it's taken without consent, and the property is actually moved. If you're missing even one of those, legally speaking, it's not theft, it's something else entirely.
Okay, so that's simple theft, but what happens when you introduce a much more serious element, like force? When violence, or even just the threat of violence, enters the picture? Well, the crime changes completely.
And here you can see that difference side by side. Robbery is basically theft with that added layer of violence or fear. But what's really interesting is that the BNS has created a whole new category, something that fits right in between simple theft and full-blown robbery.
And that new category is snatching. I mean, for the first time ever, this really common crime gets its own official name. It separates it out, because let's face it, snatching has become such a specific and widespread issue that it really needed its own legal box to tick.
Yeah, and this quote, this is exactly it, isn't it? In a flash, it was gone. That's the core of snatching. It's that sudden, quick, forceful grab and run that the law now recognizes as its own unique offense, which really reflects what's happening out there.
All right, so we've covered taking things directly from people. But what about when you just find something? Not all property crime is about the initial act of taking. Sometimes it's all about what you decide to do next.
So you find a wallet, you pick it up. Have you broken the law? Nope, not yet. But what you do in the next few moments, that is what makes all the difference legally.
And it all comes back to that idea of timing, remember? With theft, the bad intention is there from the start. But with criminal misappropriation, you come across the property innocently. The crime only happens later, when you make that conscious, dishonest decision to keep it for yourself.
Okay, so let's move to our final category. And this one's personal. It's about what happens when trust is the foundation of the entire interaction, and then that trust is completely shattered.
This table lays it out perfectly. We've gone from theft, which is about the act of taking, to misappropriation, which is about the decision to keep, and now we land on breach of trust, which is all about the act of betrayal.
So, criminal breach of trust. This is when you willingly give someone your property for a specific reason. You trust them with it, but then they turn around and dishonestly use it for something else entirely, breaking that agreement and that trust.
Yeah, look at these examples. A warehouse owner selling your stuff, an executor of a will keeping the inheritance. In every single case, a relationship of trust had to exist first. That's the key. That trust was established, and then it was broken for personal gain. It's that initial willing handover that makes this so different from, say, theft.
So, okay, we've gone through all these different definitions. Theft, snatching, misappropriation, breach of trust. So what's the big picture here? Why do all these little details actually matter?
Well, it's because the law is getting smarter. It recognizes that context is everything. It's not just about what was taken, it's about how it was taken. Was there consent? Was there force? What was the timing of the intent? Was trust involved? Getting these distinctions right is what leads to more appropriate and just outcomes.
And speaking of appropriate outcomes, check this out. There's a really significant new reformative measure in the BNS. For a first-time theft, if the item is worth less than 5,000 rupees and it's returned, the punishment can actually be community service. I mean, that's a pretty big shift in thinking, focusing more on rehabilitation for smaller, first-time offenses.
So let's just boil this all down to a super simple summary. Think of it this way. Theft, you took it. Snatching a robbery, you took it with force. Misappropriation, you found it and then decided to keep it. And breach of trust, someone gave it to you and you betrayed them. Simple as that. And knowing these differences, it does more than just help us understand legal jargon, right? It really makes you think more deeply about what's fair, about intent versus action, about the consequences. It shows that, in the eyes of the law, how something happens can be just as important as what happened.